Hi everybody, I just wanted to do a quick video about the news that Google Stadia will be closing down next year, because you're probably going to see a lot of people commenting about this, and probably most of those people never played Google Stadia, never experienced what it was like, and probably never saw the potential that it could have been. So the first thing you've got to say is what is Google Stadia? So Google Stadia, from the behemoth that is Google, was a game streaming service and a platform all in one. So the idea is that you didn't need to have expensive gaming hardware, so you didn't need to have a console or a gaming PC in order to play games at high resolution, AAA games at high resolution, the latest games, for example, like here, Resident Evil Village. And the way it did this was the games were actually playing on Google servers, out in the cloud somewhere, and they would stream the game to you. And then you could either play on keyboard or you could play with the Stadia controller, and you could play those games just as if you were playing them normally. So in effect, you'd be playing them through the browser, really. And what was really cool about it as well is not only could you play it on your laptop or your computer, I think you play it on your phone as well, but you could play it through Google Chromecast. So you could plug a Chromecast into the back of your telly, which is just like an Amazon Fire Stick, and it would stream to there. And technically, and listen, there's no bones about this, Google Stadia technically was excellent. I played it for many hours and was incredibly impressed by the quality of the gameplay in terms of very low latency, very few visual artifacts when you were playing games. It didn't look like it had been compressed too much, and it felt like you were playing on a console there. So I played quite a lot on my television with the Google Chromecast in the back, and I think this was because obviously you had the power of the Google servers behind it, so you had all this internet power that could provide really low latency, and this was on wireless as well, remember, because it's for a Google Chromecast. All the technology and the research they put into creating this gameplay experience, and also the fact that they were very clever in the way that the controller worked. In fact, the controller didn't connect to the Chromecast. The controller was wireless, and it would actually connect to the internet separately, and I think this really helped that. Now, okay, so on multiplayer games, so for example playing PUBG, it didn't feel as good as playing on something like my Xbox and my PlayStation, but for single player games especially, and I played loads because I got the trial for the Ubisoft Connect, it felt and looked fantastic. So technically it's really good. So that's why it's pretty sad as well, I think, that it is shutting it down, because technically it worked. It was brilliant. So if it was so good, why did it fail then? Well, so the first thing you've got to say is Google were trying to become, with Stadia, they were trying to become a platform and for games, and also they wanted to be the shop for the games as well. So in order to play Google Stadia games, to start off with anyway, you had to have a Google Stadia subscription, and then you had to buy the games off Google, from the Stadia shop, and they did give you free games as you were going along. But you thought, well, why, especially as this was almost like a PC service, why am I having to pay to subscribe and then play my games? Now they dropped that pretty quickly, so you could just buy games from Stadia. But the problem was that the games were too expensive and there wasn't enough of them. So you're left with a situation where you're kind of scratching your head thinking, okay, so if I buy a game on Google Stadia, I can only play it through Google Stadia. And we're going to talk about GeForce NOW in a second, which kind of takes a different approach, which has been much, much more successful. And, in the initial videos I did about Google Stadia, I said, if this service shuts down, those games are gone, you've lost them. Now, Google have said they're going to refund every single purchase anybody's ever made. So I don't know if that includes subscriptions as well that you've paid, and also the fact that if you've been playing, say, a game like Cyberpunk 2077 on the service, which ran incredibly well and was probably one of the best running versions of the game in its early days, what about your progression? How are you going to save that if you haven't bought it on PC? If you don't use like a cloud save to move it across, you don't know. So they were trying to build up, market share. They were trying to build up the fact that they were a store, and then they also tried to build up that they had this hardware platform. with the Google Chromecast and the controller. However, although technically it worked very, very well, there was one big problem with this controller. It was really nice. It was a lovely controller. If I could have found it, I would have included this in the video, but I don't know where it's gone. Was the fact that it wasn't a Bluetooth controller either. It used wireless, and it might have used a little bit of Bluetooth, which meant that you couldn't use it wirelessly with your phone or your tablet or even your laptop or PC if it had Bluetooth. You had to plug it in, which was absolutely crazy. So one of the big things about game streaming is that you can play anywhere. But if you wanted to play on a tablet or your phone, you had to plug the Google Stadia controller into your phone using a lead, or use a different controller, use like an Xbox controller or something, which was crazy. It was like they hobbled the hardware for that sort of thing straight away, because if you'd been able to connect it to your tablet via Bluetooth, that would have been such a good solution, because the streaming was so excellent. So you kind of had these two things. The fact that they hobbled the hardware when it came to mobile delivery of the games, and the fact that you were tied in to the Stadia shop, and the games, they were expensive. And so let's have a look at a couple of other streaming services and a game platform that's trying to be successful, and what did they do differently? So the big one that came out at a similar time to Google Stadia was GeForce NOW. Now GeForce NOW, exactly like Google Stadia, is a game streaming service. So the idea is that you can play on an old laptop or an old PC, or on your phone or on a tablet. You can play high-end AAA games by streaming the games from NVIDIA's GeForce NOW servers over the internet to your computer, and you can either play it through the browser, you can play it through an app, and there's low latency, and it feels really good. Now I've got to say that when I was comparing them at the time, Google Stadia definitely looked and felt better than GeForce NOW. GeForce NOW is much better now, but Google Stadia I felt technically was better. But the big difference with GeForce NOW is you're not buying the games off GeForce NOW or NVIDIA. What it does is it ties in with the Steam store, it ties in with the Epic store, it ties in with Ubisoft. I think it ties in with most of the big publishers now, and then looks at your Steam library and goes, okay, so you own Cyberpunk, so you can play this through the GeForce NOW service. Now, when it first released, there was a few problems, because what NVIDIA did was they automatically included every game in the Steam store. Quite a few developers, for some mental reason, decided that they didn't like this, because they felt that it was outside of the terms and conditions of buying a game. If you bought a game in the Steam store, you shouldn't have the right to be able to stream it, using a third-party service like GeForce NOW. Now, this was clearly the wrong decision on the behalf of developers, because the whole point of having something like GeForce NOW is that it allows people who previously couldn't play PC games to be able to play them. So in my particular case, because I had access to GeForce NOW, I then started to buy games on Steam to play. So developers, I don't think they understood what the service was really about. Now, over the last few years, many hundreds of, if not thousands of games have been added to GeForce NOW. Almost all of the new games, when they come out, get added to GeForce NOW. And all you do for GeForce NOW is there's a free option where you can play for an hour, or there's a paid option, a subscription option, where that gives you, I think you get unlimited playtime, and then there's another option where you get even better graphics. So for example, if I play like on 1080p 60 frames per second monitor or TV, so I just use the basic subscription. But if you've got like a 4K TV and a really good internet connection, you could boost that up, and you could play that as well. So GeForce NOW has been successful because it's you're not buying games off them. So if GeForce NOW shuts down tomorrow, I don't care, because I own all my games on Steam. I'll be disappointed, because if I didn't have a gaming PC, I wouldn't have a way to play them, but I still own my games, that I bought in various sales and from CD keys sites and stuff like that. So that's why GeForce NOW is successful. It's reasonably cheap, it works, and you don't buy the games off them. So let's have a look at Epic. So Epic are trying to become a place where you buy the games from, aren't they? In the same way like Steam. So if you think with Stadia was trying to get you to buy games off them. Well, Epic are trying to do the same thing, aren't they, with their Epic Store, and have been trying to do it for the last several years. Now, the reason why Epic hasn't failed yet, and I guess is fairly successful, I think, is because they really understand the cost of acquisition of people. So they want you to buy games off them, so they then get a cut of the game. You know, the developer gets some money, and Epic will get some money. Same way that's why Steam is so successful. But the way that they're purchasing your eyeballs on the Epic Store, the way that they're getting you to try and consider buying games off them. And I think I bought Cyberpunk off the Epic Store because it went to half price, is because they give away free games. So every week or so, there'll be free games that come out. Some are really good games, some are fairly boring games. But I have got, I don't know, hundreds. I've probably got a couple of hundred free games in my Epic Store launcher library. Now, most of them I'm probably never going to play, but lots of them I might do. And this means that I come back to the Epic Store. You know, I look at the Epic Store in the launcher or on the website, see what the free games are, and then I'll have a look at what's in the sale maybe, and I think, oh, you know, what does that go like? It kind of works all right. Unfortunately, it doesn't have games that need mod support in the way that games like Armour and DayZ do, but they understand they need to buy your patronage, if you like. They know that in order for me to look at the Epic Store instead of just looking at the Steam Store, is we're going to give you free games and we're going to have good aggressive pricing as well, which they do have. I mean, we'll have to see if ultimately the Epic Store is successful, but it is backed by Epic, you know, who own Fortnite, who have got billions and billions of dollars in the bank. So these are the ways that I think Google Stadia could have gone. I think if they wanted to be successful, first and foremost, I think that the controller should have been Bluetooth as well, so that you could have used it with tablets and your mobile phone. You should have been able to buy games from Stadia, absolutely buy them from Stadia, but it should have hooked in to your Steam account and your Epic account, you know, and your Ubisoft account, and brought the games in that way, so that, you know, you could have played them through that. And they should have had aggressive pricing, giving away free games to everybody. You know, you didn't have to have a subscription or anything like that. You don't have to have a subscription with Epic to get the free games. They should have been giving away free games to pull people in. And if they had done that, so if they'd had a controller that had Bluetooth in, if they'd had the ability to play games from other platforms over Stadia, and if they'd had aggressive pricing with free games, it would have been a success. You know, so when you're listening to podcasts and watching videos over the next few days, few weeks about the failure of Google Stadia, when people say things like, oh, it was because the hardware wasn't very good, or there was too much latency, the technology wasn't good. No. It was technically, the Google engineers delivered. This worked amazingly. It was just the decisions of people who were running the Stadia, these core business decisions that they chose to make the wrong decisions for, really hobbled the service, and it is it is a really good shame, because Google has got the power and the money to really put more competition into the market, in a way that maybe Epic, you know, couldn't really. And it would have nice to have a competitor, you know, because competition always makes things better. You know, competition always makes things better, and it doesn't. So there we go. And I guess the final lesson is that Google loves shutting things down. You know, if they don't work, they will just shut them down, and they're just refunding everybody. If you've ever bought a game off Stadia, you get a refund for that. If you've ever bought any hardware, you'll get a refund for that. You know, so yeah, what a shame. So there we go, Google Stadia. You will be missed, but it's because the people in charge didn't really understand video games, didn't really understand video game hardware, didn't really understand how to acquire eyeballs and players onto their platform. Anyway, that's enough from me. Hope that didn't sound like too much of a rant, but I'm quite sad that Stadia is going away. And what do you think? Put your questions and comments down below, and I will of course see you again soon.